Emma Vale learned the hard way that invisible women made the easiest targets. She'd spent 3 months surviving on catering scraps and silence, moving through Manhattan penthouses like furniture nobody noticed, divorced, broke, forgotten. Then one night she poured champagne for Lucien Moreau, billionaire, kingpin, the kind of dangerous men whispered about in courtrooms, and he looked at her like she was the only real thing in the room. One conversation, one business card, one invitation that should have sent her running. Instead, Emma walked straight into the arms of New York's most feared man, and he promised her something nobody else ever had, to make her matter. But mattering to Lucien Moreau meant becoming part of an empire built on blood, secrets, and absolute control. And once he decided Emma belonged to him, the entire city would burn before he let her go. Drop a like and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. Emma Vale's hands were shaking again. She gripped the champagne bottle tighter, the frosted glass slippery against her palms as she moved through the crowd of Manhattan's elite like she didn't exist. Which, to them, she didn't. 3 months into this nightmare, and she'd perfected the art of disappearing, eyes down, shoulders hunched, black catering uniform blending into the shadows between marble columns and gold-trimmed furniture. The Plaza Ballroom glittered like the inside of a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across women dripping in diamonds and men whose watches cost more than Emma's yearly rent. Laughter echoed off vaulted ceilings. Champagne flutes clinked. Somewhere a string quartet played something elegant and forgettable. Emma refilled glasses and collected empties and tried not to think about the studio apartment waiting for her at 2 a.m. The broken lock she couldn't afford to fix. The stack of bills she'd stopped opening because seeing the numbers made her physically sick. "Excuse me." A woman in a blood-red gown snapped her fingers without looking at Emma's face. "This is warm." Emma took the glass. "I'll get you a fresh one." The woman had already turned away, already forgotten her. Emma headed back toward the service station, weaving between clusters of people who moved through the world like they owned the oxygen in the room. Maybe they did. Money had a way of claiming everything, even air. Her manager, a sharp-faced woman named Rita, who ran the catering team like a military operation, caught her eye from across the room and tapped her watch. Translation: move faster. Emma nodded and picked up her pace. Champagne bottles balanced on a silver tray that weighed more than it should after 6 hours on her feet. She'd been a different person 6 months ago. Married, stable. Daniel had worked in finance, made decent money, talked about starting a family someday when the timing was right. Emma had believed him. She'd believed a lot of things that turned out to be bullshit wrapped in expensive wrapping paper. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. Daniel's lawyer, some shark in a $1,000 suit, had smiled at her like she was something pitiful while explaining that Emma wasn't entitled to much of anything. No kids, no property in her name. The prenup she'd signed at 23 because she'd been stupid and in love made sure Daniel walked away clean. Emma got the debt Daniel had racked up on credit cards in her name and a lawyer who charged $300 an hour to tell her she was screwed. So here she was, 31 years old, serving champagne to people who wouldn't piss on her if she was on fire. The service station sat tucked behind a velvet curtain near the kitchen doors. Emma set down her tray and flexed her aching fingers. Rita appeared beside her, clipboard in hand, stress radiating off her like heat. Table 12 needs a refresh. VIP section upstairs wants a full spread in 20 minutes. And somebody spilled red wine on the north terrace. Get it cleaned before it stains. Emma nodded. Got it. You look exhausted. I'm fine. Rita gave her a look that said she didn't believe that for a second but didn't have time to care. Breaks in an hour. Don't disappear on me. Emma grabbed fresh bottles and headed for the marble staircase that curved up toward the VIP section. Her feet screamed inside the cheap black flats she'd bought at a discount store. Everything hurt. Her back. Her shoulders. The constant headache that lived behind her eyes from too little sleep and too much stress. But she needed this job. Needed the paycheck. Needed something to keep her from drowning completely. The VIP section occupied the entire second floor, a private lounge with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Security stood at the entrance, two massive guys in dark suits with earpieces and expressions that said they'd seen everything and been impressed by nothing. Catering, Emma said quietly. One of them checked her ID badge, then stepped aside. Emma walked through and immediately felt the atmosphere shift. The VIP lounge was quieter, more intimate, less crowded. The people up here didn't need to prove anything to anyone. They owned the world and knew it. Emma set up the champagne spread on a side table near the windows, working quickly and efficiently. Most of the guests ignored her. A few glanced over with the kind of detached curiosity people reserved for zoo animals. Then she saw him. He sat alone in a corner booth near the far windows, dressed in black like he was attending a funeral. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes the color of winter ice. He wasn't looking at the crowd, wasn't smiling, wasn't doing anything except existing in a space that seemed to bend around him like gravity. Emma recognized power when she saw it, and this man radiated it like radiation. She finished setting up the champagne and turned to leave. That's when his eyes locked onto hers. Her breath caught. He didn't look through her the way everyone else did. He looked at her, direct, unflinching, like he could see straight through the catering uniform into the exhausted, terrified woman beneath. Emma forced herself to move, walked toward the exit, told herself not to look back. "Wait!" His voice cut through the ambient noise like a knife. Low, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't repeat itself because people listened the first time. Emma stopped, turned. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something between curiosity and calculation. "Bring me a glass." It wasn't a question. Emma grabbed a champagne flute and walked over to his booth. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Mid-30s, expensive suit that probably cost more than her car before the bank repossessed it. Hands that looked like they'd never done manual labor, but somehow didn't seem soft. She poured the champagne, hands steady despite the anxiety crawling up her spine. "You're new," he said. 3 months. "You hate it." Emma's eyes snapped to his. He was still watching her with that unreadable expression. She should have lied, should have said something polite and generic and safe. Instead, she said, "Every second." A faint smile touched his lips. "Honest. I like that. I should get back to work. What's your name?" She hesitated. Giving her name felt dangerous for reasons she couldn't articulate. "Emma." "Emma." He said it like he was testing how it sounded. "I'm Lucien." She knew exactly who he was. Lucien Moreau, billionaire, hotel magnate, the name attached to half the luxury properties in Manhattan and whispered about in connection with things no newspaper could quite prove. Money, power, influence that stretched into places most people pretended didn't exist. "I know," Emma said quietly. His smile widened slightly. "Then you know I'm not someone who wastes time. I really need to—" "Sit." It wasn't a request. Emma's pulse kicked up. She glanced toward the exit, then back at him. Everything inside her screamed to walk away. Instead, she slid into the booth across from him, her body tense and ready to bolt. Lucien studied her like she was a puzzle he was deciding whether to solve. "You don't belong here." "I'm working." "That's not what I mean." He leaned forward slightly. "You carry yourself like someone who's survived something, someone who's still surviving." Emma's throat tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." His eyes stayed locked on hers. "I've built empires by learning to read people. You're exhausted, scared, running from something." "I'm fine." "Liar." The word hit like a slap. Emma flinched. Lucien's expression didn't change. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" He continued. "I see someone who's been made to feel invisible for so long, she forgot what it's like to be seen." Emma's chest constricted. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This stranger, this dangerous, powerful stranger, had just peeled back every layer of armor she'd spent months building. "I have to go," she whispered. Lucien reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Simple. Black. Embossed gold lettering. He slid it across the table. "If you ever get tired of being invisible," he said quietly, "call me." Emma stared at the card like it might explode. "Why?" "Because I don't waste things that interest me." His eyes held hers. "And you, Emma, are the most interesting person I've seen in a very long time." She grabbed the card before her brain could stop her hand. Stood. Walked away on legs that felt like they might give out. When she reached the exit, she couldn't help herself. She looked back. Mistress was still watching her, still wearing that faint, dangerous smile. Emma fled. Well, the rest of her shift passed in a blur. Emma moved through the motions, refilling glasses, clearing plates, avoiding Rita's sharp eyes, while her mind replayed the conversation on an endless loop. If you ever get tired of being invisible, call me. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't. Men like Lucien Moreau didn't offer kindness without expecting something in return. And whatever he wanted would be more than Emma could afford to give. By the time her shift ended at 2 in the morning, exhaustion had settled into her bones like concrete. She changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom, stuffing the business card into her jacket pocket where it burned like a live coal. The subway ride back to her neighborhood took 40 minutes. Emma sat in the corner of an empty car, watching her reflection in the dark windows. Hollow eyes, pale skin, hair pulled back in a ponytail that had come half undone. When had she become this person? Her studio apartment sat on the 4th floor of a building that should have been condemned a decade ago. The lock on her door had been broken for 2 weeks. Emma had complained to the landlord 3 times. He kept promising to fix it and never did. She pushed the door open and flipped on the light. The single bulb flickered, casting weak yellow light across peeling wallpaper and a mattress on the floor. No furniture, no decorations, nothing that made this place feel like home because it wasn't. It was just a box where she slept between shifts. Emma dropped her bag and collapsed onto the mattress. Every muscle ached, her feet throbbed. The headache behind her eyes had evolved into something sharper, meaner. She pulled out Lucien's business card. The embossed lettering caught the light. Simple, elegant, expensive. Just a name, a phone number, and the logo for Moreau Industries. Emma should have thrown it away. Instead, she set it on the floor beside her mattress and stared at the cracked ceiling until sleep finally dragged her under. 3 days passed before Emma called. 3 days of double shifts and aching feet and bills she couldn't pay. 3 days of eating ramen for every meal because it was the only thing she could afford. 3 days of lying awake at night staring at that business card and wondering if she'd finally lost her mind. On the 4th day, her landlord showed up demanding rent she didn't have. When Emma tried to explain she'd have it next week, he'd looked her up and down like she was garbage and said if she couldn't pay in cash, maybe they could work out another arrangement. The way he said it made Emma's skin crawl. She slammed the door in his face, locked it, or tried to, before remembering the lock was broken, and grabbed her phone before fear could stop her. She dialed the number on the card. It rang twice before a smooth, professional voice answered, "Moreau Industries." Emma's mouth went dry. I need to speak with Lucien Moreau. A pause. May I ask who's calling? Emma Vale. He gave me his card. Another pause, longer this time. Emma was about to hang up when the voice returned. Please hold. Classical music filled the line. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. She didn't know this man, didn't know what he wanted, Emma! Lucien's voice poured through the phone like whiskey, smooth, dark, intoxicating. I wasn't sure you'd call, he said. I wasn't sure I would either. But you did. She could hear the smile in his voice. Are you tired of being invisible yet? Emma closed her eyes. I don't even know what that means. Have dinner with me, tonight. I'll show you. Every rational part of her brain screamed no. This was how bad decisions started. This was how people ended up in situations they couldn't escape. Okay, Emma whispered. I'll send a car at 7. Wear whatever makes you feel powerful. He hung up before she could respond. Emma stood in her empty apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, and wondered if she'd just made the best or worst decision of her life. The car arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. Emma had spent the last 4 hours trying on every piece of clothing she owned and hating all of it. Nothing made her feel powerful. Everything hung wrong or looked cheap or reminded her of the person she used to be. Finally, she'd settled on a simple black dress she'd bought for a work event 2 years ago. It fit well enough, didn't scream poverty, made her look like she belonged somewhere other than a catering line. The driver, a silent man in a dark suit, opened the door to a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Emma had made in her entire life. She slid into leather seats that smelled like money and tried not to hyperventilate. The drive took 20 minutes. They headed uptown, weaving through traffic until the buildings grew taller and the streets grew cleaner, and Emma realized they were heading into a part of Manhattan she'd only ever seen from the outside. The car pulled up in front of L'Etoile, a restaurant perched on top of a glass tower that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought gravity was optional. Soft golden light spilled from floor-to-ceiling windows. A doorman in white gloves stood at attention. Emma's stomach dropped. "I can't afford this." "You're not paying," the driver said, his first word since picking her up. The door opened. Emma stepped out onto a red carpet that led to the entrance. She felt like a fraud, like someone had made a terrible mistake and any second someone would realize and send her home. Inside, the restaurant was a cathedral of wealth. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, soft piano music, the kind of place where people spoke in quiet voices, and every plate looked like art. A hostess in a perfect smile greeted her. "Ms. Vale?" Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. "Right this way." They walked through the main dining room and out onto a private terrace. The city spread out below like a carpet of lights. The air was cool, crisp, carrying the faint scent of expensive food and night-blooming jasmine. Lucien stood at a table near the edge, hands in his pockets, looking out over the skyline. He turned when Emma approached, and something in his expression shifted, softened, maybe, though that word didn't quite fit a man like him. "You came," he said. "You sent a car. I wasn't sure that would be enough." He gestured to the table. "Please." Emma sat. The chair was more comfortable than her mattress. Lucien sat across from her, and suddenly the entire city seemed very small. A waiter appeared with wine. Lucien ordered for both of them in French, his accent flawless. Emma watched him and tried to remember how to breathe normally. When the waiter left, Lucien's attention settled on her like a spotlight. "Tell me about the man who made you feel invisible," he said. Emma blinked. "What?" "Your ex-husband. That's who hurt you, isn't it?" Her hands tightened around her wine glass. "How did you—" "I pay attention." His eyes never left hers. "And I don't bring women to dinner without knowing who they are." A chill ran down Emma's spine. "You had me investigated?" "I had you researched. There's a difference." "That's—" Emma stopped, took a breath. "That's invasive." "Yes." No apology, no excuse, just acknowledgement. Emma should have stood up, should have walked out. Instead, she stayed frozen in her chair, caught between outrage and something that felt disturbingly like relief. Someone had paid attention to her. Someone had thought she was worth knowing about. "Daniel," she said finally. "His name was Daniel. We were married for 5 years. He left me for someone younger, richer, better connected. Took everything in the divorce and left me with his debt." Lucien's jaw tightened. "And now?" "Now I work 3 jobs trying to keep my head above water. I live in an apartment with a broken lock. I eat ramen for every meal." The words poured out like poison she'd been holding in for months. "I'm one bad shift away from being homeless, and nobody gives a damn because I'm nobody." Silence settled over the table. Then Lucien said, "You're not nobody to me." Emma's throat closed. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." He leaned forward. "I know you're stronger than you think. I know you've survived things that would have broken most people. I know you walked into that ballroom 3 days ago looking like you wanted to disappear, and when I asked you to sit with me, you were brave enough to say yes." "That wasn't brave. That was stupid." "Maybe," a ghost of a smile. "Or maybe you recognize something in me that I recognized in you." "What's that?" "Loneliness." The word hung in the air between them. "I've built an empire, Emma. I control more money than most people can comprehend. I have politicians on speed dial and business partners who'd kill for my approval. And I sleep alone in a house that feels like a mausoleum because I can't remember the last time I met someone real." Emma stared at him. "Why me?" "Because you didn't care who I was. You just wanted to leave." "I still want to leave." "But you haven't." His eyes burned into hers. "Why?" "Because she was tired. Because she was desperate. Because for the first time in months, someone was looking at her like she mattered." "I don't know," Emma whispered. Lucien reached across the table and covered her hand with his. His skin was warm, his grip firm without being aggressive. Let me show you what it feels like to be seen, he said quietly. No games, no lies, just honesty. And what do you get out of this? Maybe I'm tired of being alone. The waiter returned with food. Emma barely tasted it. She was too busy trying to figure out if this was real or if she'd stumbled into something far more dangerous than her broken apartment and unpaid bills. They talked through dinner. Lucien asked questions, real questions, not small talk, and listened to her answers like they mattered. He told her about building his business from nothing, about the people he'd destroyed along the way, about the weight of power and how it isolated you from everything human. By the time dessert arrived, Emma had forgotten to be terrified. Then Lucien said, I want to be honest with you about who I am. Ice slid down Emma's spine. Okay, my business isn't entirely legal. The city lights blurred. Emma set down her fork. I started in real estate, Lucien continued, his voice steady and unflinching. Legitimate deals, smart investments, but money attracts attention, and attention attracts people who want things from you. Politicians who need favors, businessmen who need problems to disappear. I learned quickly that playing by the rules meant getting crushed by people who didn't. So you stopped playing by the rules. I made my own. His eyes held hers. I've destroyed companies, buried scandals, made enemies vanish. I'm not a good man, Emma. I'm a necessary one. Emma's hands were shaking again. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't want you to find out later and feel betrayed. If you walk away now, I'll understand, but if you stay, he paused. If you stay, you need to know exactly who you're standing next to. Emma's mind raced. This was insane. He was confessing to crimes, to being dangerous, to being exactly the kind of man she should run from. But underneath the fear, something else burned, fascination. What happens if I stay? She asked. Lucien's expression shifted into something hungry. I make sure you never feel invisible again. The air between them crackled with tension. I should go, Emma said, even though she didn't move. You should, Lucien agreed. He stood, walked around the table, and extended his hand. But you won't. Emma took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They stood inches apart, the city blazing beneath them, the night air humming with possibilities and danger. Lucien lifted his hand and brushed his thumb across her cheek. The touch sent electricity down her spine. I'm going to kiss you now, he said quietly. And if you don't want that, tell me to stop. Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She didn't tell him to stop. Lucien's mouth claimed hers with devastating precision. Not aggressive, but absolute. A kiss that tasted like power and wine and something darker underneath. Emma's hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him closer, drowning in the intensity of him. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, Lucien rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me, he whispered. Emma knew what that meant, knew that crossing that line would change everything. Knew she was standing on the edge of a cliff with a man who made empires tremble. Yes, she breathed. Lucien's smile was devastating. He took her hand and led her back through the restaurant. The car waited. They climbed inside. The driver pulled away from the curb and headed toward whatever came next. Emma watched the city blur past the windows and realized she'd just stepped off the cliff, and she had no idea if Lucien Moreau would catch her or let her fall. The gates to Lucien's estate opened like the mouth of something vast and hungry. Emma watched through the car window as iron bars swung inward, revealing a private road that curved through manicured darkness. Security lights flickered on in sequence, illuminating perfectly trimmed hedges and surveillance cameras positioned every 20 feet. Armed guards stood at attention near a guardhouse, their faces blank and professional. This wasn't a home. This was a fortress. The car glided up the driveway for what felt like miles before the main house came into view. Modern architecture, glass and steel and clean lines that looked like they'd been carved from ice. Lights glowed from within, golden and warm, completely at odds with the cold perfection of the exterior. Emma's pulse hammered in her throat. The wine from dinner sat heavy in her stomach, mixing with nerves and something that felt dangerously close to excitement. The driver stopped at the entrance. Lucien opened his door and stepped out, then extended his hand toward Emma. She hesitated. Having second thoughts? He asked quietly. Third, maybe fourth. Good. That means you're smart. His hand stayed extended. But you're still here. Emma took his hand and let him help her out of the car. The night air was cooler up here, away from the city's heat. She could smell jasmine again, and something else. Chlorine, maybe. A pool somewhere on the property. Lucien led her up marble steps to a front door that probably weighed more than her entire apartment. It swung open before they reached it. A woman in her 50s stood in the entrance hall, dressed in a crisp gray suit, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Mr. Moreau," she said with a slight nod. "Catherine, this is Emma Vale. She'll be staying tonight." Catherine's expression didn't change, but Emma saw the flicker of assessment in her eyes. Being measured, being judged. Of course. "Shall I prepare the West guest suite?" "No." Lucien's hand tightened slightly on Emma's. "She's with me." Something in Catherine's face shifted, surprise maybe, or concern, but she smoothed it away quickly. "Very well. Do you need anything else this evening?" "Privacy." Catherine nodded and disappeared down a hallway, her footsteps silent on the polished floors. Emma stood in the entrance hall and tried not to feel like she'd just entered a museum. Everything was pristine, expensive. The kind of space where you were afraid to touch anything because it probably cost more than your life. "Relax," Lucien said, reading her tension. "It's just a house." "It's really not." He smiled faintly and led her deeper inside. They walked through rooms that blurred together. A living room with furniture that looked like art installations. A dining room with a table that could seat 20. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. And a fireplace big enough to stand in. Everything was perfect. Everything was cold. Lucien took her upstairs, down a hallway lined with abstract paintings, to a set of double doors at the end. He pushed them open, and Emma's breath caught. The master bedroom was massive. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, dressed in charcoal gray linens that probably had a thread count Emma couldn't pronounce. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the skyline glittering like scattered diamonds. A sitting area, a fireplace. Doors leading to what had to be a closet the size of her entire studio. "This is where you sleep?" Emma asked. "Where I try to sleep." Lucien walked to the windows and looked out over the city. "Most nights I just lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering when I became the kind of man who owns all this but can't remember what it feels like to be at peace." Emma moved to stand beside him. From this height, Manhattan looked unreal. Toy cars moving through toy streets. Millions of people living their lives completely unaware that someone was watching from above, untouchable and alone. "You regret it?" she asked. "Building all this?" "No." His reflection in the glass was sharp, hard. "I regret what I had to become to keep it." Before Emma could respond, Lucien turned to face her. The city lights cast shadows across his features, making him look even more dangerous. "Last chance to leave," he said quietly. "After this, things get complicated." Emma's heart was trying to climb out of her chest. Every rational thought screamed at her to walk away, to call a cab, to run back to her broken apartment and her broken life, and stay safe in her misery. Instead, she reached up and touched his face. Lucien's eyes darkened. He pulled her against him and kissed her like he was claiming something that belonged to him. Emma kissed back with desperation she didn't know she had, her hands fisting in his jacket, her body pressed against his. They stumbled toward the bed. Clothes hit the floor. The city lights painted their skin in golden shadow, and for the first time in 3 months, Emma forgot what it felt like to be invisible. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize. For a disorienting moment, she had no idea where she was. Then memory crashed back. The restaurant, the kiss, the drive to an estate that looked like it belonged in a movie. Lucien's hands on her skin, his mouth against her throat. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. She sat up slowly. The bed was empty beside her. The sheets were cool where Lucien had been. Emma wrapped herself in the sheet and walked to the windows. Morning light turned the city into something softer, less threatening. From here, she could see the armed guards patrolling the grounds, the surveillance cameras tracking movement, the high walls that separated this world from everything outside. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, her voice rough from sleep. Catherine entered carrying a silver tray with coffee, fresh fruit, and pastries that looked like they'd been imported from France. She set it on the bedside table without comment. "Mr. Moreau is in a conference call," she said. "He asked me to let you know he'll join you for breakfast in an hour." "Thank you." Catherine started to leave, then paused. "There are clothes in the closet, your size." Emma blinked. "How?" "Mr. Moreau is very thorough." Catherine's expression was carefully neutral. "He had them delivered last night." Before Emma could process that, the implications of it, the control it suggested, Catherine was gone. Emma walked to the closet and pulled open the doors. An entire wardrobe hung inside. Designer labels, perfect sizes, everything from casual wear to evening gowns. Shoes lined the bottom shelves in neat rows. Her stomach twisted. This should have felt like a gift. Instead, it felt like being dressed up like a doll. She grabbed the simplest thing she could find, black jeans and a soft gray sweater, and got dressed. The clothes fit perfectly. Of course they did. By the time Lucien appeared, Emma had consumed 2 cups of coffee and worked herself into a quiet panic. He walked in looking like he hadn't slept, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His hair was slightly disheveled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "You're angry," he said immediately. "The clothes. You needed something to wear. You had them delivered before you even knew if I'd stay." Emma set down her coffee cup with more force than necessary. "You decided for me." Lucien's jaw tightened. "I wanted you to be comfortable. You wanted to control the situation." Yes. No apology, no excuse, just brutal honesty. "I'm a controlling man, Emma. I told you that last night. Telling me and proving it are different things." They stared at each other across the bedroom. Tension crackled in the air between them, sharp and electric. Finally, Lucien said, "If you want to leave, I'll have the car brought around." "Do you want me to leave?" "No." His eyes burned into hers. "But I won't keep you here if you don't want to be kept." Emma's pulse pounded in her ears. She should leave, should run, should get as far away from this man and his fortress and his perfect controlling life as possible. "I need to go to work," she said instead. "Call in sick. I can't afford to—" "I'll cover the lost wages." "Stop doing that," Emma's voice cracked. "Stop trying to fix everything with money." Lucien crossed the room in 3 strides and cupped her face in his hands. "Then tell me what you need." "I need to understand what this is." Her voice shook. "Are you trying to save me? Own me? What?" "I'm trying to keep you." His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones. "Because I haven't wanted to keep anything in a very long time, and you terrify me." Emma's breath hitched. "I terrify you?" "You make me feel things I thought I'd buried. Hope, need, vulnerability." His forehead dropped against hers. "And I don't know what the hell to do with any of it, except hold on too tight and hope you don't run." The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open in Emma's chest. "I'm not running," she whispered. "You should." "Probably." Lucien kissed her softly, gently, so different from last night's desperation that it almost hurt. When he pulled back, his expression had shifted into something more guarded. "I have meetings all day. Stay here. Catherine will take care of you." "Lucien, please." The word sounded foreign in his mouth, like he wasn't used to asking for things. "Just for today. Let me know you're safe." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to prove she wasn't some fragile thing that needed protecting, but the exhaustion in his eyes stopped her. "Okay," she said quietly. One day, relief flickered across his face. He kissed her forehead and left. Emma stood alone in the massive bedroom and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. The day stretched out strange and surreal. Catherine showed Emma around the estate with professional detachment. The pool house, the gym, the private screening room, a wine cellar that looked like something from a movie, gardens maintained with military precision. Everything was beautiful. Everything was empty. "How long have you worked for Mr. Moreau?" Emma asked as they walked through the gardens. 15 years. "Do you like him?" Catherine's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Moreau is a fair employer." "That's not what I asked." Catherine stopped walking and turned to face Emma. For the first time, something shifted in her carefully controlled features. "I've watched Mr. Moreau destroy people who threatened him," she said quietly. "I've watched him build an empire and lose himself in the process. I've watched him become the kind of man who sleeps 4 hours a night because he can't shut off his mind long enough to rest. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the first woman he's ever brought here who looked at him like he was human instead of a bank account. Catherine's eyes were sharp, assessing. And I'm not sure if that makes you very brave or very foolish. Emma's throat tightened. What do you think it makes me? I think that depends on whether you survive what comes next. Before Emma could ask what that meant, Catherine's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at Emma. Mr. Moreau's 3 o'clock has been moved up. He'll be in meetings until late this evening. Dinner will be served at 8. She walked away, leaving Emma alone in the garden with a warning that felt like a blade pressed against her throat. By evening, Emma was climbing the walls. She'd explored the estate, read in the library, swam in the pool, tried on clothes she'd never be able to afford in 100 lifetimes. And through it all, the wrongness of it crawled under her skin like insects. This wasn't her life. This wasn't her world. She was standing in the library staring at leather-bound books she'd never read when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and her blood went cold. 17 missed calls from Rita. 3 voicemails. A dozen texts that all said variations of the same thing. Where are you? You missed your shift. Call me now. Shit. Emma's hands shook as she opened Rita's last text. Don't bother coming back. You're fired. The phone slipped from her fingers and hit the carpet. She'd forgotten. In the chaos of last night and this morning and the surreal dream of Lucien's world, she'd completely forgotten about her shift. Panic clawed up her throat. That job had been her lifeline, the only thing keeping her from drowning completely. And she'd just blown it because she'd been too busy playing princess in a billionaire's fortress. Emma! She spun around. Lucien stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes, looking exhausted and tense. I lost my job, she said numbly. His expression didn't change. I know, Rita called the house. You what? She called here looking for you, said you'd missed your shift and she needed to know if you were alive. Emma's chest constricted. What did you tell her? That you were with me, that you wouldn't be coming back. The room tilted. You had no right. I also offered her a consulting fee for her trouble and a recommendation letter for her resume. Lucien's voice was calm, controlled. She seemed satisfied. Emma stared at him. You can't just buy my life. I'm not buying it. I'm simplifying it. By making my decisions for me? By removing obstacles. He took a step closer. You hated that job, Emma. You said so yourself. That's not the point. Then what is? The point is I didn't get to choose. Her voice cracked. You chose for me. Again. Just like the clothes. Just like everything else. Lucien's jaw clenched. You want to work yourself to death for minimum wage and empty gratitude? Be my guest. I'll have the car take you back to your apartment with the broken lock and the landlord who propositions you for rent. Emma flinched. How did you? I told you. I pay attention. His eyes were cold now, flat. And I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Aren't you? The question hung between them like a blade. Emma's hands curled into fists. You don't own me, Lucien. I know. His voice dropped to something dangerous. But I will destroy anyone who tries to hurt you. And if that means controlling your environment until you're safe, then that's exactly what I'll do. That's not protection. That's possession. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night. They glared at each other. The air between them vibrated with fury and heat, and something darker neither of them wanted to name. Finally, Emma said, I'm leaving. No, you're not. You just said, I said I wouldn't keep you here if you didn't want to be kept. But you do want to be here, Emma. You're just terrified of admitting it. You don't know what I want. Yes, I do. Lucien closed the distance between them. You want someone to see you, to choose you, to fight for you. You've spent years being treated like you don't matter, and now that someone's willing to burn the world for you, it scares you to death. Emma's breath came in short, sharp gasps. You're twisting this. I'm telling you the truth. His hand cupped her jaw, forcing her to meet his eyes. You want me. You hate that you want me. But you're here anyway because, for the first time in your life, someone's making you feel like you're worth fighting for. Tears burned behind Emma's eyes. I hate you. Liar. He kissed her hard, brutal. Emma kissed back with equal violence, her nails digging into his shoulders, her teeth catching his lip hard enough to draw blood. They crashed against the bookshelf. Books tumbled to the floor. Lucien's hands were everywhere, possessive and claiming, and Emma let him because he was right. She did want this. She hated herself for it, but she wanted it anyway. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien's eyes were black with want. I'm not letting you go, he said. You're going to destroy me. Probably. His thumb traced her swollen lip. But I'll build you back up stronger. Emma wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that someone like her could survive someone like him. Instead, she pulled away and walked out of the library before she could surrender completely. 3 days passed in a blur of tension and temporary truces. Emma stayed. She told herself it was temporary. Told herself she'd leave as soon as she figured out her next move. Told herself she wasn't falling for a man who treated control like a language and power like oxygen. She was lying. Lucien gave her space during the days, meetings, conference calls, running an empire from his private office. But at night, he pulled her into his bed and held her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. They fought, constantly, about everything, her independence, his need for control, the way he handled problems by throwing money at them, the way she refused to accept help even when she was drowning. Every argument ended the same way. Tangled in sheets, breathing hard, both of them too stubborn to apologize, but too addicted to each other to walk away. On the fourth morning, Emma woke to find Lucien already gone. Catherine brought breakfast with a message. Mr. Moreau had an emergency at one of his properties. He'd be back late. Emma spent the day restless and angry, pacing the estate like a caged animal. By evening, she'd made a decision. She needed air, space, something that reminded her she existed outside of Lucien's world. She found Catherine in the kitchen. I'm going out. Catherine looked up from her tablet. Mr. Moreau prefers you stay on the property. I'm sure he does. Can you call me a car? Miss Vale? I'm going, Emma said firmly, with or without a car. Catherine studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll have Marcus drive you, but Mr. Moreau will hear about this. Good. He can hear about it when he gets home. 20 minutes later, Emma was in the back of a town car heading into Manhattan. Marcus, a broad-shouldered driver who looked more like security than staff, drove in silence while Emma watched the city blur past. She didn't have a destination in mind. Just needed to move. Needed to remember what freedom felt like before Lucien's world swallowed her whole. They ended up in her old neighborhood. Emma had Marcus drop her off 3 blocks from her apartment. She walked the familiar streets, breathing in the smell of cheap takeout and car exhaust, and humanity pressed too close together. Her building looked even more decrepit than she remembered, cracked concrete steps, graffiti-tagged walls, the front door hanging half off its hinges. Emma climbed to the 4th floor and stood outside her apartment door. The broken lock still wasn't fixed. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The mattress on the floor, peeling wallpaper, the single bulb casting weak yellow light, bills stacked on the counter. This had been her prison, but at least it had been hers. Emma sat on the mattress and put her head in her hands. What the hell was she doing? Playing house with a billionaire who admitted to destroying people? Letting herself be dressed up and protected and controlled because it felt better than being alone? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Get out. Now. Emma's blood went cold. Before she could move, footsteps pounded up the stairs outside. She scrambled to her feet as the door crashed open. 3 men in dark clothes flooded into the apartment. No masks, no hesitation. One of them grabbed Emma's arm and yanked her forward. Emma Vale? She tried to pull away. Who the hell are you? The man's grip tightened painfully. Message for Moreau. Tell him Victor Constantine says hello. Terror flooded Emma's system. I don't... The second man pulled out a phone and started recording. Smile for the camera, sweetheart. Emma jerked hard, breaking free. She ran for the door. Made it 2 steps before someone grabbed her hair and slammed her against the wall. Pain exploded across her vision. Not so fast! Hot breath against her ear. We're just getting started. Then gunshots cracked through the air. The men spun toward the door. Marcus stood there, gun raised, expression cold as death. Step away from her. Everything happened fast. The men reached for weapons. Marcus fired twice more. Bodies hit the floor. Blood splattered the peeling wallpaper. Emma's ears rang. Her vision swam. Marcus grabbed her arm, gentle, efficient, and pulled her over the bodies toward the door. We need to move. Now. Emma's legs moved on autopilot, down the stairs, into the car. Marcus drove like hell itself was chasing them, weaving through traffic while speaking rapid fire into a phone. Emma sat in the back seat, shaking, watching blood soak into her sleeve from where her head had hit the wall. Her phone rang. Lucian's name flashed on the screen. She answered with trembling hands. Emma! His voice was tight, controlled fury barely leashed. Are you hurt? There were men. They knew my name. I know. Marcus told me. Are you hurt? My head. I think I'm bleeding. Listen to me. Every word was sharp, precise. You're going to the estate. A doctor is already on the way. Marcus will keep you safe until I get there. Lucienne, they mentioned someone. Victor. Silence. Long and terrible. Then, Victor Constantine. The way he said the name made Emma's blood freeze. He's coming for you, she whispered. No. Something in Lucian's voice shifted into something inhuman, something that belonged to the man who destroyed empires and buried enemies. I'm coming for him. The line went dead. Emma stared at her phone as the car raced toward the estate and realized with crystal clarity that she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. She wasn't just in Lucian's world anymore. She was the reason his world was about to go to war. The estate doctor finished stitching the gash above Emma's temple with clinical efficiency that suggested he'd done this before. Too many times before. Emma sat on the edge of Lucian's bed, her hands still trembling, watching her blood stain the white gauze the doctor pressed against her skin. The metallic smell mixed with antiseptic made her stomach turn. Mild concussion, the doctor said, snapping off his latex gloves. No permanent damage. Keep the wound clean. Ice for the swelling. Someone should monitor her tonight. I will. Catherine stood near the door, her usual composure cracked at the edges. She'd gone pale when Marcus had carried Emma inside, blood streaming down her face. The doctor packed his supplies and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. Emma and Catherine sat in silence. Outside, security lights swept across the grounds in steady patterns. Armed men moved between posts. The estate had transformed into something military, locked down and waiting. How often does this happen? Emma asked quietly. Catherine didn't pretend to misunderstand. Not often, but often enough that we have protocols. Protocols for what? Kidnapping attempts? Assassination? For protecting what Mr. Moreau values. Catherine's eyes met hers. And he's never valued anything the way he values you. Emma's throat tightened. That's why they came after me. Yes. Who is Victor Constantine? Catherine's expression shuddered. That's not my story to tell. Before Emma could press, the bedroom doors crashed open. Lucian strode in like a storm given human form. Blood spattered his white shirt. His knuckles were split and raw. His eyes burned with something beyond rage. Something cold and calculating and absolutely lethal. He crossed the room in 3 strides and cupped Emma's face in his hands, tilting her head to examine the stitches. His touch was surprisingly gentle, despite the violence radiating off him. I'm okay, Emma said, though her voice shook. You're not. His thumb traced the bruise blooming along her cheekbone. But you will be. The men are being handled. The way he said it made Emma's blood run cold. Lucienne, what does that mean? He didn't answer, just pulled her against his chest and held her like she might shatter. Emma felt his heart hammering against her ear, felt the tremor in his hands that he was trying to hide. I need you to tell me everything, he said finally. Every word they said, every detail you remember. Emma pulled back enough to look at him. His face was a mask of control, but his eyes told a different story. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. She told him. The men flooding her apartment. The message for Moreau. Victor Constantine's name. The camera recording her face. Lucian's jaw clenched tighter with each word. When she finished, he released her and turned to Catherine. Get me Alexander, now. Catherine left without question. Lucien paced to the windows, staring out at the city like he could burn it down with his gaze alone. Who is he? Emma asked. Victor? Someone from a life I tried to leave behind. Lucian's voice was flat, emotionless. Someone who wants to destroy everything I've built. Why? He turned to face her. Because I destroyed him first. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications Emma wasn't sure she wanted to understand. 10 years ago, Lucian said finally, I was building my empire, making deals, eliminating competition. Victor Constantine was a partner. We controlled the luxury hotel market together, legitimate business on the surface, money laundering, and real estate manipulation underneath. Emma's hands curled into fists. What happened? He got greedy, started skimming profits, using our network to move things I wouldn't touch, drugs, weapons, people. Lucian's expression hardened. I gave him a choice. Walk away clean or burn with everything he'd built. He didn't walk away. No. Something flickered in Lucian's eyes. So I buried him, seized his assets, exposed his operations to the FBI. By the time I was finished, Victor Constantine lost everything. His business, his reputation, his freedom. He went to prison. For 8 years. Lucian's voice dropped. He got out 6 months ago. Ice slid down Emma's spine. And you didn't think to mention this? I thought he'd moved to Europe, started over. I had people watching him. His hands clenched. I didn't think he'd be stupid enough to come after me on my own territory. He's not coming after you. Emma's voice cracked. He's coming after me. The truth of it hung in the air like poison. Lucian crossed back to her and knelt, bringing them eye to eye. I won't let him touch you again. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. His voice was absolute. I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let Victor Constantine take you from me. A knock at the door interrupted them. A man entered, tall, lean, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who'd killed people and slept fine afterward. Alexander, Lucian said, this is Emma. Alexander's gaze swept over her, cataloging the stitches, the bruises, the blood on her clothes. Miss Vale, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Who are you? Head of security. A thin smile. Among other things. Lucien stood. Victor made his move. 3 men at Emma's apartment. Marcus eliminated 2. The third is downstairs. Emma's stomach dropped. You brought him here? Where else would I take him? Lucian's tone suggested this was obvious. We need information. You mean you're going to torture him? Silence. Neither man denied it. Emma surged to her feet, ignoring the way the room tilted. You can't. That's necessary. Lucian's eyes were cold. That man and his associates put their hands on you, hurt you, recorded you to send Victor a message that he could reach you anytime he wanted. His voice dropped to something deadly. I need to know everything Victor is planning, and that man downstairs is going to tell me. This is insane. This is survival. He stepped closer. Welcome to my world, Emma. This is what I do to protect what's mine. Emma stared at him. At the blood on his shirt, the split knuckles, the absolute certainty in his eyes that violence was the answer. I can't be part of this, she whispered. You already are. No apology. No softening. The moment you said yes to dinner, the moment you came home with me, you became part of this. Victor knows your name, knows your face, knows hurting you hurts me. His jaw clenched. There's no going back now. Tears burned behind Emma's eyes. I didn't ask for this. I know. For a moment, something human flickered in Lucian's expression. But I'm asking you to trust me anyway. To trust you to what? Become a monster? I've always been a monster, Emma. You just hadn't seen it up close yet. The brutal honesty of it stole her breath. Alexander cleared his throat. We should move. Victor will expect a response. Lucian nodded. Give me 10 minutes. Alexander left. Lucian turned back to Emma, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Finally, Emma said, If you do this, if you torture that man, I don't know if I can stay. Then leave. His voice was gentle, devastating. Walk away right now. I'll have Marcus take you anywhere you want to go. I'll set you up with enough money to start over somewhere Victor can't find you. You'd let me go? I'd hate every second of it. But yes. He touched her face, his fingers feather-light on her bruised skin. I won't keep you in a world that destroys you. Emma's chest constricted. She should leave, should run, should get as far away from this beautiful, terrifying man as possible. But the thought of walking away, of never seeing him again, never feeling his hands on her skin, never mattering to someone the way she mattered to him, was worse than the fear. I hate you, she whispered. I know. She kissed him, hard, desperate, tasting blood and fury and something that felt dangerously close to love. When they broke apart, Lucien rested his forehead against hers. Stay upstairs, he said quietly. Don't come down. Don't listen. Just wait for me. Emma nodded because she couldn't form words. Lucien kissed her once more and left. Emma stood alone in the bedroom and wondered when she'd become the kind of woman who let monsters fight her battles. She lasted 20 minutes. 20 minutes of pacing, of staring at the door, of hearing sounds from somewhere deep in the estate, muffled voices, a scream cut short, something heavy hitting concrete. 20 minutes before she couldn't stand it anymore. Emma left the bedroom and moved through the silent house. Catherine was nowhere to be seen. The security cameras tracked her movement, but no one stopped her. She followed the sounds down a hallway she hadn't explored, past rooms that looked ordinary and elegant, until she reached a door that didn't match the rest. Steel, reinforced, a keypad lock that required a code. The door was cracked open. Emma's hand shook as she pushed it wider. Stairs led down into darkness. The sounds were clearer now. Lucien's voice, cold and precise, asking questions. Alexander's quieter responses. And underneath it all, whimpering that made Emma's skin crawl. She descended. The basement was nothing like the rest of the estate. Concrete walls, bare bulbs. A drain in the center of the floor stained dark with things Emma didn't want to identify. The man from her apartment was zip-tied to a metal chair. His face was a mess of blood and swelling. Lucien stood in front of him, shirt sleeves rolled up, knuckles dripping red. Alexander leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching with professional detachment. Tell me where Victor is, Lucien was saying, his voice conversational, or I start breaking bones you actually need. The man spat blood. Go to hell! Lucien grabbed the man's hand and twisted. Bone cracked. The scream that followed echoed off concrete. Emma's stomach heaved. Lucien looked up and saw her standing at the bottom of the stairs. Something flickered in his eyes, shame, maybe, or regret, but it vanished quickly. I told you to stay upstairs. I couldn't. Then watch. His voice hardened. This is who I am, Emma. This is what I do to people who threaten what belongs to me. He turned back to the man in the chair. Victor's location. Now. The man laughed, a wet, horrible sound. You think I'm scared of you? Victor promised me $100,000 to grab your pretty little girlfriend. Said it was easy money. Blood bubbled at his lips. He was right about the pretty part. Lucien hit him. The crack of knuckles against bone made Emma flinch. Where is Victor? Warehouse district. Red Hook. The words came out slurred. Old fish processing plant. He's got 20 men. You come for him, you're dead. Lucien stepped back, looked at Alexander. Verify it. Alexander pulled out his phone and made a call, speaking in rapid Russian. Emma couldn't follow. The man in the chair laughed again. Doesn't matter if you find him. He's already won. Explain that. Lucien's voice was deadly quiet. The video. Your girl's face plastered all over the dark web with a price tag. Every crew from here to Boston knows she's worth cash. His bloody grin widened. Victor doesn't need to grab her himself. He just needs to wait for someone else to collect. Emma's knees went weak. She grabbed the stair railing to keep from falling. Lucien went very, very still. How much? $250,000, dead or alive. The basement erupted into chaos. Lucien grabbed the man by the throat and slammed him backward, chair and all, into the concrete. The sickening crunch of impact made Emma scream. Lucien, stop! He didn't stop, couldn't stop. Years of control shattered under the weight of pure primal rage. Alexander moved fast, grabbing Lucien and hauling him backward. Enough! We need him alive to verify the information. Lucien shook him off, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't his. His eyes found Emma across the room. She'd never seen him look like this. Unhinged, desperate, terrified beneath the fury. "Get her out of here," he said to Alexander. "Lock down the estate. No one in or out." "Lucienne," Emma started. "Now!" Alexander moved toward her. Emma backed up the stairs, her mind spinning, panic clawing at her throat. $250,000. Her face on the dark web. Every criminal in the city hunting her. She'd thought Lucien's world was dangerous. She'd had no idea. Alexander led her back upstairs in silence. The house felt different now. Not a fortress, but a prison. Every window was a vulnerability. Every shadow held threats. Catherine appeared pale and tense. "Get her to the panic room." "No," Emma said. "I'm not hiding in a—" "It's not optional." Alexander's voice was firm. "Victor just put a bounty on your head. Until we neutralize the threat, you stay in the most secure location in the estate." He led her to what looked like a coat closet on the second floor. Inside, a hidden panel opened to reveal a small room lined with monitors, supplies, communication equipment, a bed, a bathroom. Everything needed to survive a siege. "How long?" Emma asked numbly. "However long it takes." The door closed behind him, locks engaged with heavy metallic thuds. Emma sat on the bed and stared at the monitors showing different angles of the estate. Guards moving in patterns. Vehicles pulling up to the gates. Lucien emerging from the basement, washing blood off his hands at an outdoor sink. She'd stepped into his world thinking she understood the dangers. She'd been so stupidly, fatally wrong. Hours passed like years. Emma watched through the monitors as the estate transformed into a war zone. More security arrived. Vehicles with darkened windows, men in tactical gear carrying weapons that looked military-grade. Lucien appeared on the monitors periodically, moving between rooms, talking on phones, directing operations. He never looked at the cameras, never acknowledged that Emma was watching. Around midnight, the power flickered. Emma's heart jumped into her throat. The monitors went black for 3 seconds before backup generators kicked in. When the screens came back online, chaos had erupted. Men in masks were scaling the walls. Gunfire crackled across the grounds. Security personnel scattered, returning fire, shouting coordinates into radios. Emma's hands pressed against the monitor screens, watching helplessly as Lucien's fortress came under siege. Then she saw him. Lucien emerged from the main house carrying a gun that looked like it belonged in a war zone. He moved with terrifying efficiency, dropping attackers with precise shots, coordinating his security team with hand signals. This wasn't a billionaire protecting his property. This was a soldier fighting a war. Emma watched a man die on Lucien's front lawn, watched another get dragged away by security, watched Lucien reload without hesitation and keep moving. The attack lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, bodies littered the grounds. Emergency vehicles screamed in the distance. Lucien stood in the middle of his driveway, breathing hard, covered in someone else's blood. The panic room door opened. Emma spun around. Alexander stood in the doorway, his face grim. "We need to move you." "What? Why?" "That attack was a distraction. Victor's real team hit Lucien's hotel downtown." Alexander's expression was stone. "They left a message. He wants to meet, alone, or the next attack targets the hospital where your mother is being treated." Emma's world tilted violently. "My mother?" "Stage 4 cancer, St. Vincent's Hospital, room 412. Alexander's eyes were sympathetic but firm. "Victor did his homework." Emma's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, her mind fragmenting. Her mother who she hadn't spoken to in 6 months because Emma couldn't afford the hospital bills, couldn't face the guilt of her own failures, couldn't bear to watch the one person who'd never given up on her slowly dying. Victor Constantine knew exactly where to cut deepest. "I need to talk to Lucien," Emma whispered. "He's on his way." Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Lucien appeared, still covered in blood, his expression carved from stone. He dropped to his knees in front of Emma and cupped her face in his hands. "I'm going to kill him," he said quietly. "I'm going to make Victor Constantine beg for death before I give it to him. He knows about my mother." "I know." "You knew?" Emma's voice cracked. "You knew she was sick and you didn't tell me?" "I knew everything about you before we had dinner. No apology, no shame. I needed to understand what I was protecting." Emma shoved him away. You investigated my dying mother and didn't tell me? Would it have changed anything? His eyes bored into hers. Would you have taken my money to help her? Let me pay her medical bills? That's not the point. That's exactly the point. Lucien's voice rose. You were so busy drowning in pride you couldn't see the lifeline right in front of you. Your mother is dying, Emma. She's been dying while you served champagne to strangers and ate ramen for dinner because asking for help would mean admitting you couldn't handle everything alone. The words hit like physical blows. I can help her now, Lucien continued, gentler. I can move her to the best facility in the country. Experimental treatments. Whatever she needs. In exchange for what? Emma's voice shook. Me, staying, playing the grateful girlfriend while you control my entire life? In exchange for nothing. He grabbed her hands. I'd do it whether you stayed or not. Because you love her, and I... He stopped, swallowed hard. And you matter to me. Tears streamed down Emma's face. This is too much. All of it. The violence, the threats, the control. I can't... Then walk away. Lucien's voice was raw. I'll handle Victor, protect your mother, make sure you're both safe, and you never have to see me again. You'd really let me go? I'd rather cut off my own hand, but yes. Emma stared at him through her tears, at this man who'd torn her life apart and put it back together in a shape she didn't recognize. This man who killed people in his basement and promised to protect her mother. This man who looked at her like she was the only thing in his world that mattered. She should leave, should run, should save whatever pieces of herself she could still recognize. Instead, she said, What's the plan? Lucien's eyes widened fractionally. Emma? He's using my mother as leverage. He wants you alone. Her voice steadied. So we give him what he wants. Absolutely not. You said I was part of this world now, that there's no going back. Emma met his gaze. So stop protecting me like I'm breakable and tell me the plan. Lucien and Alexander exchanged looks. It's a trap, Alexander said. Victor wants Lucien vulnerable. Probably has 20 men waiting. Then we spring the trap first. Emma's mind was racing now, clarity cutting through the fear. He wants a meeting? Fine. But we control the location, the timing, everything. Lucien studied her like he'd never seen her before. You understand what you're saying. If this goes wrong, we're already dead. Emma's voice didn't shake. Victor won't stop until he destroys everything you love. Which apparently includes me now. Not apparently. Lucien's hand curled around the back of her neck. Definitely. He kissed her, hard and desperate and tasting like blood. When they broke apart, his expression had shifted into something Emma had never seen before. Pride. All right, he said. Here's what we're going to do. The plan was insane. Lucien would meet Victor at a neutral location, an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district that Alexander's team would sweep first. Emma would wait at a secondary location with half the security team, ready to move her mother if Victor tried anything. But the real trap was simpler. While Victor focused on Lucien, Alexander's team would hit Victor's base of operations simultaneously, eliminate his men, seize his resources, leave him with nothing. And if Victor survived the night, he'd discover that threatening Lucien Moreau's world meant watching his own burn to ashes. Emma sat in an armored SUV 3 blocks from the warehouse, watching the clock tick toward midnight. Security surrounded her, 4 men with enough weapons to start a small war. Her phone buzzed. Lucien, I love you. Emma's breath caught. He'd never said it before, never even implied it. She typed back with shaking hands. Come back alive. Always. The line went dead. Through the tinted windows, Emma watched the warehouse district's skeletal buildings loom against the night sky. Somewhere in that darkness, Lucien was walking into a trap. And Emma, for the first time in her life, was trusting someone else to survive it. The radio crackled. Alexander's voice. All teams in position. Primary target entering the zone now. Emma's hands clenched in her lap. This was it. The moment that would either end the nightmare or make it permanent. She closed her eyes and waited for the sound of gunfire. Instead, she heard her driver say, We've got a problem. Emma's eyes snapped open. What? He pointed at the rear view mirror. 3 black vans were pulling up behind them, blocking the street. Emma's blood went cold. Drive, now. Can't. They're boxing us in front too. Doors opened. Men poured out. Too many men, all armed. The security team around Emma scrambled, raising weapons, shouting into radios. Then Emma saw him. Victor Constantine stepped out of the center van, tall and lean with silver hair and a smile that promised violence. He looked nothing like the monster she'd imagined. He looked like someone's elegant grandfather. He walked toward Emma's vehicle like he had all the time in the world. Emma's driver grabbed his gun. "Stay down." Victor knocked on the window. His voice carried through the bulletproof glass, smooth and cultured. "Emma Vale, I've been looking forward to meeting you." The driver aimed his weapon. "Back away." Victor pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward the window. Emma's heart stopped. The screen showed security camera footage of St. Vincent's Hospital. Her mother's room. A man in scrubs standing beside her mother's bed, holding a syringe. "Fascinating thing about hospital security," Victor said pleasantly. "So easy to bypass when you're willing to pay the right people." "Don't," Emma's voice cracked. "Please, get out of the vehicle. Come with me quietly, and your mother lives to see morning." Victor's smile widened. "Refuse, and my associate administers a very lethal dose of something the doctors will mistake for a heart attack." The security team leader shook his head at Emma. "Don't do it. It's a bluff." "Is it?" Victor tapped his phone. On screen, the man in scrubs moved closer to Emma's mother's IV line. Emma's hand was on the door handle before her brain could stop her. "Emma, no." She opened the door and stepped out into the street. Victor's men surrounded her immediately. Hands grabbed her arms. Zip ties bit into her wrists. "Smart girl," Victor said. He turned to her security team. "Tell Lucien Moreau I'll be in touch about the ransom. And tell him—" His smile turned vicious. "Tell him this is what happens when you destroy a man's entire life. Eventually, he finds a way to return the favor." They shoved Emma into one of the vans. The doors slammed shut, and as the vehicle pulled away, Emma realized with devastating clarity that she'd just become the weapon Victor would use to break Lucien completely. The van smelled like rust and fear. Emma's wrists burned where the zip ties cut into her skin. She sat wedged between two of Victor's men on a metal bench, her shoulders pressed against bodies that radiated violence like heat. The vehicle lurched through turns, throwing her against hard muscle and harder edges. No one spoke. Emma counted her breaths, tried to keep her mind from spiraling into the horror of what she'd just done. Her mother's face on that screen, the syringe in the man's hand, the choice that wasn't a choice at all. Lucien would be getting the message now, would know she'd been taken, would be tearing his entire world apart trying to find her. The thought should have brought comfort. Instead, it made her sick with terror. The van finally stopped. Doors opened. Hands grabbed Emma and hauled her out into darkness that smelled like chemicals and rotting fish. Old processing plant. Red Hook. The location Victor's man had given up under torture. Which meant Lucien knew exactly where she was. Which meant this was all part of Victor's plan. They dragged Emma through a loading bay door hanging half off its hinges. Inside, the facility was a graveyard of industrial equipment, rusted conveyor belts, shattered tanks, concrete floors stained black with decades of waste. Emergency lights cast everything in sickly yellow. Victor's men shoved Emma into a cleared space in the center of the main floor. A metal chair waited. They forced her into it and secured her wrist to the armrest with fresh zip ties that bit even deeper. Victor appeared from the shadows, moving with the unhurried confidence of a man who'd already won. Up close, he looked older than Emma had thought. Late 50s, well-dressed, the kind of man you'd see at the opera, not orchestrating kidnappings. "Comfortable?" he asked pleasantly. Emma said nothing. Victor pulled up a second chair and sat facing her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. "You're wondering why you're still alive." The thought crossed my mind. "Because Lucien Moreau doesn't negotiate for corpses." Victor crossed his legs, utterly relaxed. "He needs to believe you can be saved, needs hope. Hope is what makes men desperate, and desperate men make mistakes." Emma's pulse hammered. "He'll kill you." "Perhaps. But not before I take everything from him the way he took everything from me." Victor's smile was ice. "Do you know what it's like to build an empire and watch it crumble? To have everything you've worked for seized by a man who decided your existence was inconvenient? You were laundering money, moving weapons. And he wasn't? Victor laughed. The difference between Lucien and me is that he was better at hiding it, better at playing the respectable billionaire while his hands stayed just as bloody as mine. So this is revenge. This is justice. Victor leaned forward. I spent 8 years in a federal prison because of him. 8 years watching my wife die alone. My children disown me. My name becomes synonymous with failure. His eyes glittered. And now I'm going to make him feel every second of that pain. By killing me. Eventually. Victor pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. But first, I'm going to let him try to save you. The phone showed a live feed. The warehouse entrance, Lucian's armored convoy pulling up outside. Men pouring out, weapons raised, tactical formation. Emma's chest constricted. You're going to ambush him. I'm going to give him a choice. Victor turned the phone so she could see clearly. Save you or survive. He can't do both. On screen, Lucien emerged from the lead vehicle. Even through the grainy security footage, Emma could see the controlled fury radiating off him. He was dressed in tactical gear now, no longer the billionaire in expensive suits. He looked like what he truly was, a killer. Victor stood and called out to someone Emma couldn't see. Bring the second guest. 2 men dragged someone else into the cleared space. A woman, thin, pale, hospital gown hanging off fragile shoulders. Emma's heart stopped. Mom? Her mother's head lifted. Confusion and medication clouded her eyes, but recognition flickered. Emma! Baby, what? You son of a bitch! Emma lunged against the restraints hard enough to tear skin. You said you'd leave her alone. I said she'd live to see morning. Victor checked his watch. It's still technically night. He grabbed Emma's mother by the arm and forced her into a chair beside Emma's. The older woman whimpered, too weak to fight. Don't touch her. Emma's voice cracked. Victor ignored her. He positioned Emma's mother in clear view of the security cameras, then turned back to his phone. On screen, Alexander was speaking to Lucien, pointing at something. Lucien's expression went very, very still. He sees you now, Victor said. Both of you. The woman he loves and the woman who gave her life. 2 birds. 1 very difficult stone. Emma's mother's hand found hers despite the restraints. Her grip was weak, trembling. I don't understand what's happening. I know, Mom. It's okay. It's going to be okay. Liar. Victor's voice was almost gentle. It's not going to be okay. In approximately 5 minutes, Lucien is going to breach this facility. My men will engage. And in the chaos, you'll both become collateral damage. Tragic. Unavoidable. He'll find a way. Will he? Victor crouched in front of Emma. Do you know how many men I have positioned throughout this building? 43. All heavily armed, all with orders to shoot anything that moves. Your security team is good, but they're not miracle workers. Emma's mind raced. Lucien was walking into a kill box. He knew it was a trap. Had to know. But he was coming anyway because she was here. Because Victor had played the one card that would make Lucien abandon caution. Her. Why are you telling me this? Emma whispered. Because I want you to understand. Victor stood. When Lucien fails tonight, when he's forced to watch you die because his arrogance made you a target, I want him to remember this moment, the moment he could have saved you by never getting involved with you in the first place. He walked toward the exit, pulling out his phone. Positions, everyone. Our guest is about to arrive. Emma stared at her mother's terrified face and felt something inside her shift. Not fear, not panic, rage. Pure, crystalline rage. Mom, she said quietly, I need you to stay very still and very quiet. Emma, do you trust me? Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Always. Emma started working the zip ties. The restraints were tight, professional, but the chair's armrests had rough edges where rust had eaten through the metal. She twisted her wrists, ignoring the pain, dragging the plastic against the jagged surface. Blood made her hands slippery, made the ties slide. On the security monitors scattered throughout the facility, Emma watched Lucien's team breach the perimeter. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness. Men screamed and died. Emma kept sawing. The zip tie on her right wrist snapped. She froze, listening. Victor's men were focused on the entrance. Weapons trained on the doors Lucien would come through. No one was watching the two women in the center of the room. Emma freed her left hand and immediately started on her mother's restraints. "What are you doing?" her mother whispered. "Getting us out of here. Baby, you can't watch me." The main doors exploded inward. Smoke grenades flooded the facility. Emergency lights strobed through the chemical fog. Gunfire intensified into something apocalyptic. Emma grabbed her mother and hauled her out of the chair. They stumbled toward the shadows near the back wall, Emma half carrying the older woman's weight. Behind them, Victor's voice cut through the chaos. "Find them! Now!" Bullets chewed through metal, concrete, everything. Emma shoved her mother behind a rusted tank and covered her body with her own, pressed her hand over her mother's mouth to muffle the terrified sounds she was making. Through the smoke, Emma saw Lucien. He moved through the kill zone like death-given human form. 2 guns, no hesitation. Every shot dropped a target. Alexander flanked him, equally lethal, covering angles. But there were too many. Victor's men poured from elevated positions, flanking positions, positions Lucien's team couldn't have anticipated. Lucien took a round to the shoulder, stumbled, kept moving. Emma's chest seized. She had to do something, had to help, had to... There! One of Victor's men spotted them, raised his weapon. Emma didn't think, just moved. She grabbed a length of rusted pipe from the debris and swung with everything she had. The pipe connected with the man's skull with a sickening crunch. He dropped. Emma grabbed his gun. She'd never held a weapon before, never fired a shot, but her hands found the grip like they'd done this before. Muscle memory from a life she'd never lived. Another man appeared through the smoke. Emma fired. The recoil nearly tore the gun from her hands. The shot went wide, but close enough to make him duck. "Emma!" Lucien's voice cut through the carnage. She turned, locked eyes with him across the smoking chaos. He looked at her, at the gun in her hands, the blood on her clothes, the body at her feet, and something in his expression shattered and rebuilt simultaneously. Pride, horror, love. Then Victor appeared behind him. "Lucien!" Emma screamed. Lucien spun. Too slow. Victor's gun was already rising. Alexander took the shot meant for Lucien's head. The impact spun him sideways. He crashed into a conveyor belt and didn't move. Lucien's roar was inhuman. He turned on Victor with something beyond rage, beyond sanity. Victor retreated, firing. Lucien absorbed 2 rounds to his vest and kept coming. They collided in a tangle of violence. Gun clattered away. Fists, elbows, fighting with the brutal efficiency of men who'd killed before and would kill again. Emma couldn't get a clean shot. Couldn't risk hitting Lucien. More of Victor's men were converging. Too many. They'd overwhelmed the position. Emma made a decision. She grabbed her mother. "We're moving. Now." "I can't." "You can." Emma's voice was steel. "You didn't survive cancer this long to die in a warehouse. Move." They ran. Emma half-dragged her mother through the smoke and chaos toward an emergency exit she'd spotted earlier. Bullets traced through the air around them. Something hot grazed Emma's arm, tearing fabric and skin. She didn't stop. Behind them, Lucien and Victor's fight had devolved into something primal. Blood slicked the concrete. Bones broke. Flesh tore. Emma hit the emergency exit and shoved through into the night air. Sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights painted the darkness. Dozens of them. Police. FBI. Someone had called them. Emma stumbled toward the lights, waving frantically, her mother clutching her arm. "Help! We need help!" Officers swarmed them. Paramedics appeared with blankets and gurneys. Someone was asking Emma questions she couldn't process. "There are men inside," she gasped. "Lucien Moreau, he needs..." An explosion rocked the building. The old fish processing plant's 2nd floor collapsed inward, belching smoke and flame. The structure groaned, buckling. "No!" Emma tried to run back toward the building. Arms grabbed her, held her back. "No! He's still in there! Lucien!" More explosions, chain reaction. Victor must have rigged the entire facility. The building folded in on itself with the slow inevitability of something dying. Emma screamed until her voice gave out. Paramedics forced her onto a gurney. Someone was putting an oxygen mask on her face. Her mother was being loaded into an ambulance, and Emma watched Lucien's tomb burn. St. Vincent's Hospital, room 4-7. Emma sat beside her mother's bed, wrapped in blankets that didn't help, watching monitors beep with the steady rhythm of someone still alive. They'd treated Emma's wounds, the gash on her arm, the lacerations on her wrists, the bruises covering her body. Nothing life-threatening, nothing that mattered. FBI agents had questioned her for 3 hours. Names, details, everything she knew about Victor Constantine and Lucia Moreau. Emma had answered mechanically, her voice flat, her mind somewhere else. Somewhere under burning rubble. Her mother slept, sedated. The doctor said she'd be fine, said the stress hadn't triggered any complications, said Emma had saved her life by getting her out when she did. Emma felt nothing. A knock at the door. Catherine entered, looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Her clothes were rumpled. Her eyes were red. "Miss Vale?" Emma couldn't form words. Catherine sat in the chair across from her. "Alexander is alive. Critical condition, but stable. The doctors think he'll make it." Emma nodded numbly. "We recovered 6 bodies from the facility. None of them were Mr. Moreau." Emma's breath caught. "What?" "He's not dead." Catherine's voice was steady, certain. "They found Victor Constantine's body. Confirmed identity. But Lucien..." She paused. "He has contingency plans, escape routes. He's survived worse." The building collapsed. "I know." Catherine's eyes held hers. "But they didn't find him, which means he got out." Hope was a knife in Emma's chest. Sharp, painful, impossible to ignore. "You don't know that." "I know Lucien Moreau." Catherine's voice softened. "And I know he wouldn't die without making sure you were safe first." Emma wanted to believe it, wanted to let hope take root. But she'd watched the building burn, watched it fall, seen the devastation. "The FBI is investigating," Catherine continued. "They're treating it as a criminal enterprise war. They've seized Lucien's assets, frozen his accounts. The media is calling it the biggest organized crime story of the decade." Emma's laugh was hollow. He finally got exposed. "Perhaps. Or perhaps this is exactly what he wanted." Catherine stood. "There's a car waiting downstairs. Whenever you and your mother are ready, I'll take you somewhere safe." "Lucien's estate is crawling with federal agents. No, somewhere else, somewhere no one will think to look." Emma stared at her. "You're still protecting us." "I'm following my employer's final instructions." Catherine's expression was unreadable. "He was very specific about what should happen if something ever happened to him. Your mother receives the best medical care money can buy. You receive a trust fund that will keep you comfortable for life. And both of you disappear until it's safe." "I don't want his money." "Take it anyway." Catherine moved toward the door. "He'd want to know you were taken care of." She left before Emma could argue. Emma sat in the hospital room, listening to her mother breathe, watching the sun rise over a city that had tried to kill her. Lucien was gone. Victor was dead. And Emma was alive. She should have felt relief. Victory, something. Instead, she felt empty. 3 days passed. Emma moved through the motions, sat with her mother during the day, ignored the FBI's calls, watched the news coverage of the Moreau crime family collapse with detached interest. No body had been found. The media speculated wildly, dead, in hiding, fled the country. Emma didn't know what to believe. On the 4th morning, her mother was strong enough for solid food. Emma was helping her eat when Catherine appeared in the doorway. "We need to leave," she said urgently. "Now." "What's wrong?" FBI traced Victor's financial network, found evidence of additional conspirators. "They're coming for anyone connected to the organization." Catherine's eyes were sharp. "That includes you." "I didn't do anything." "You killed a man in that warehouse. Self-defense or not, they'll use it to pressure you, to get information about Lucien." She moved to the bed and started unhooking monitors. "We have maybe an hour before they arrive with a warrant." Emma's mind raced. "My mother can't travel yet." "She'll have to." Catherine was already calling someone on her phone. "Medical transport is being arranged. We're going to a private facility upstate, fully staffed, off the grid." "Catherine, Miss Vale, I've worked for Lucien Moreau for 15 years. I know what federal investigations look like. If you stay here, you'll spend the next 6 months in legal hell." Her voice dropped. Is that what you want? Emma looked at her mother, weak, fragile, just starting to recover. No, she whispered. Then trust me. They moved fast. Catherine had orchestrated everything with military precision. Private ambulance, back exit, routes that avoided security cameras. Emma sat in the back of the medical transport, holding her mother's hand, watching New York disappear behind them. Where are we going? Her mother asked weakly. Somewhere safe. Emma. Her mother's grip tightened. Who was that man? The one who fought for you? Emma's throat closed. Someone I should have run from. Did you love him? Past tense, like he was already dead. Yes, Emma whispered. I think I did. Her mother closed her eyes. Then I hope he's still alive to hear you say it. Emma stared out the window and tried not to think about Lucian buried under rubble. Tried not to imagine his last moments. Tried not to remember the way he'd looked at her across that smoke-filled warehouse, like she was worth dying for. The facility Catherine took them to was a converted estate in the Adirondacks. Private, secure. Medical staff who asked no questions and accepted cash payment. Emma's mother was installed in a suite with round-the-clock care. Emma was given an adjacent room with a view of mountains and forest that felt like a different planet from Manhattan's chaos. Days blurred together. Emma healed, her mother grew stronger. The news coverage shifted to other scandals. And still no word about Lucian. 2 weeks after the warehouse, Emma was sitting in the facility's garden when Catherine found her. There's someone here to see you. Emma's heart stopped. Who? Catherine's expression was carefully neutral. He asked me to tell you he's sorry it took so long. Emma was on her feet and running before her brain caught up. She burst through the facility's front doors and stopped. Lucian stood beside a black car in the driveway. Alive. Battered. His arm in a sling. Stitches across his forehead. Moving like every breath hurt. But alive. Their eyes met across the distance. Emma crossed the space between them at a dead run and slammed into him hard enough to make him stagger. Her arms wrapped around his neck. His good arm pulled her against him. You're alive, she gasped against his throat. You're alive, you bastard. You're alive. Barely. His voice was rough, broken. Building came down. Trapped for 6 hours before my team dug me out. Had to disappear until the heat died down. 2 weeks. I thought you were dead for 2 weeks. I know. I'm sorry. He pulled back enough to cup her face. I had to make sure it was safe. Had to make sure Victor's network was completely destroyed before I came back. Emma kissed him, desperate, furious, tasting blood and smoke and survival. When they broke apart, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. Victor's dead, he said quietly. His organization's dismantled. The FBI has enough evidence to put away everyone connected to him. You're safe. We're not safe. They're investigating you. Let them investigate. They'll find a billionaire philanthropist whose business records are impeccable and whose criminal connections died with Victor Constantine. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I've been building my exit strategy for years. Lucian, I'm done. His eyes held hers. Done with the empire. Done with the violence. Done with all of it. Victor was right about one thing. This life destroys everything it touches. And I almost lost you because of it. Emma's chest constricted. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm disappearing. New identity. Clean slate. Somewhere far away from Manhattan and everything I built there. He touched her face. And I'm asking if you'll come with me. Emma stared at him. At this man who'd torn her life apart. Who'd shown her violence and protection and obsessive, overwhelming love. Who'd nearly died saving her. My mother will have the best care money can buy for the rest of her life. I've already arranged it. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I'm not asking you to choose between us. I'm asking you to let me take care of both of you. You're asking me to run away with you. I'm asking you to start over with me. His voice dropped. No more fortress. No more empire. Just us. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can figure out who we are when we're not fighting for survival. Emma closed her eyes. Every rational part of her brain screamed this was insane. That running away solved nothing. That Lucian would always be dangerous, always be controlling, always be the man who'd built an empire on blood. But underneath the fear, something else burned. The knowledge that she'd never felt as seen, as valued, as fiercely protected as she did in his arms. The certainty that walking away would feel like cutting out her own heart. "Where would we go?" she whispered. Lucian's smile was devastating. "Anywhere you want." Emma opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked at him. At the man beneath the power and violence. The man who'd chosen her over his empire, who'd walked through fire to keep her alive. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay?" "Yes." Her hands fisted in his jacket. "Take me somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, somewhere I can be yours without the whole world trying to kill us for it." Lucian kissed her, gentle, reverent, like she was something precious he'd almost lost. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with something that looked like tears. "I love you," he said. The words hit like a physical force. "I know," Emma whispered. "I love you too." He pulled her close and held her like he'd never let go. And somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed as federal agents descended on Lucien Moreau's empty estate, searching for a king who'd already abandoned his kingdom. For the woman who'd made him remember he was human. 6 months later, Emma woke to the sound of waves. Not the angry crash of ocean against rock, but the gentle lap of lake water meeting shoreline. Soft, rhythmic. The kind of sound that belonged to a world where violence was something distant and theoretical. She opened her eyes to sunlight streaming through gauze curtains. The bedroom was small, simple. Wood floors, white walls, furniture they'd picked out together from a secondhand store 2 towns over. Nothing like Lucian's Manhattan fortress with its marble and steel and suffocating perfection. This felt like home. Lucien wasn't beside her. Emma sat up, running her hand over the empty sheets still warm from his body. Through the open window, she could hear him moving around downstairs. The smell of coffee drifted up. They'd landed here almost by accident. A small town in northern Washington state, tucked between mountains and forest, and a lake so clear you could see straight to the bottom. Population 800. One main street. A general store that doubled as a post office, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors but minded their own business. Perfect for disappearing. Emma pulled on one of Lucian's shirts, too big, hanging to her thighs, and padded downstairs barefoot. The house was a renovated cabin perched on the lake's edge. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with windows overlooking the water, a living room with a fireplace they actually used. They'd bought it cash through a shell company so buried in legal layers that not even the FBI could trace it. Lucian stood at the stove, spatula in hand, cooking eggs with the focused concentration he brought to everything. His arm had healed, though he still favored it sometimes. The scars on his forehead had faded to thin white lines. He'd let his hair grow longer, wore flannel and jeans instead of designer suits. He looked younger, less haunted. He looked happy. "You're staring," he said without turning around. Emma smiled. "You're cooking. Someone has to feed you." He plated the eggs and turned to face her. His eyes traced over her wearing his shirt, and something heated flickered in his expression. "Though I'm reconsidering breakfast." "Don't." Emma crossed to the coffee maker and poured 2 mugs. "I'm starving." They ate at the small kitchen table, legs tangled beneath it, watching the morning light turn the lake into liquid gold. This had become their routine. Wake up. Breakfast together. Lucien would spend the day doing contracting work. He'd gotten licensed under his new identity. Turned out he was good with his hands when he wasn't using them to destroy empires. Emma worked remotely doing accounting for small businesses, using skills she'd forgotten she had. Normal lives. Quiet lives. Lives that shouldn't have worked for people like them. But somehow did. "Your mother called yesterday," Lucien said, breaking the comfortable silence. "While you were in town." Emma's chest tightened. "How is she?" "Good. Treatment's going well. Her doctors are optimistic." He reached across the table and took her hand. "She asked when we're visiting. And you said?" "That we'd come for Thanksgiving if she's feeling up to it." Emma nodded. Her mother was 3 hours away in a private facility that looked like a luxury resort. The best oncologists money could buy. Experimental treatments that were actually working. She'd gained weight. Her color had returned. The doctors were using words like remission. Catherine had arranged everything, still called every week with updates. Still managed the trust fund Lucien had set up. Still protected them from a distance. still loyal to a man who'd officially died in a warehouse fire. "She wants to meet you," Emma said quietly. "The real you, not the man on the news." Lucian's expression shadowed. "She knows who I was. She knows who you are now." Emma's thumb traced circles on his palm. "And she's grateful you saved my life. I nearly got you killed, but you didn't." Emma stood and moved around the table to straddle his lap. Her hands cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "You protected me, destroyed the threat, got us out. That's what matters." Lucian's hands settled on her hips. "Sometimes I wake up and can't believe this is real, that you're here, that we made it out." "We did. Victor's men could have killed you. The building could have collapsed on both of us. The FBI could have—" Emma kissed him quiet. When she pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion. "We survived," she said firmly. "Both of us. And now we get to figure out what comes next." "What if there is no next?" His voice dropped. "What if this is it? Hiding, pretending to be people we're not, always looking over our shoulders." "Is that what you're doing? Pretending?" Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then, "No. This is the most real I've felt in 20 years. Emma smiled and kissed him again, softer this time. "Then stop waiting for it to fall apart." His arms tightened around her. "I love you." "I know." She rested her forehead against his. "Now finish your eggs before they get cold." The afternoon brought rain. Emma sat curled in the window seat overlooking the lake, watching water blur the mountains into watercolor smudges. A book lay open in her lap, unread. Her mind was elsewhere. 6 months. 6 months of peace. 6 months of waking up next to Lucien without armed guards outside. 6 months of grocery shopping and cooking dinner and arguing about whose turn it was to do the dishes. 6 months of almost forgetting the blood. Almost. Because sometimes Emma woke from nightmares where Victor's men were dragging her into that van again. Where her mother was dying in a hospital bed she couldn't reach. Where Lucien was buried under burning rubble and Emma was screaming his name into smoke. Sometimes Lucien woke the same way, thrashing, reaching for weapons that weren't there, calling out names of people he'd lost. They'd both carry scars, the kind that didn't show on skin. The front door opened. Lucien appeared, soaked from the rain, carrying groceries. He kicked off his boots and headed for the kitchen. "Road's getting bad," he called. "Might flood if this keeps up." Emma set down her book and joined him. "We have enough supplies?" "For a siege." He started unpacking bags. "I may have overcompensated." Emma laughed. Some habits died hard. They put away groceries in comfortable silence. Emma was reaching for the top shelf when Lucian's phone buzzed on the counter. He froze. The phone was a burner. Untraceable. Only 3 people had the number: Catherine, Alexander, and a lawyer who managed the legal complexities of their new identities. Lucian picked it up. Checked the screen. His expression went carefully blank. "What is it?" Emma asked. "Catherine." He opened the message. Read. His jaw clenched. "Lucien?" He handed her the phone. The message was short. "FBI closed the Moreau investigation. No charges filed. You're officially dead. Congratulations on your resurrection." Below it, a link to a news article. Emma clicked. The headline read, "Moreau Empire officially dissolved. Billionaire declared legally dead." The article detailed the FBI's conclusion. Lucien Moreau had died in the warehouse explosion alongside Victor Constantin. His assets had been seized, liquidated, distributed among creditors and victims of his alleged crimes. The empire was gone. The king was dead. Long live the king. Emma looked up at Lucien. "You're free. We're free." His voice was rough. "No more looking over our shoulders. No more waiting for federal agents to show up. It's over." Emma should have felt relief. Victory. Something. Instead, she felt the weight of everything it had cost to get here. "Did you ever think we'd make it?" she asked quietly. Lucien pulled her against him. "No, I thought Victor would kill me, and you'd spend the rest of your life trying to forget I existed." "Would have been easier." "Probably." His arms tightened. "You regretting it?" Emma pulled back enough to look at him. Really, look at him. At the man who'd torn her life apart and rebuilt it into something she never knew she wanted. At the scars he carried, visible and invisible, from protecting her. At the way he looked at her like she was the only thing in his world that mattered. No, she said. I don't regret it. Even the bad parts? Especially the bad parts. Emma's hands framed his face. They got us here. Lucien kissed her. Slow, deep. The kind of kiss that tasted like gratitude and second chances and futures they'd fought to earn. When they broke apart, rain was hammering the roof. We should celebrate, Lucien said. How? A slow smile spread across his face. I have an idea. He took her to the bedroom and made love to her like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. No more countdown clocks, no more threats, no more empire demanding his attention or enemies demanding his blood. Just them. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets, listening to the rain, Lucien's fingers tracing idle patterns on Emma's bare shoulder. I want to marry you, he said into the quiet. Emma's breath caught. What? Properly. Not some rushed thing because we're running from the FBI. A real wedding, somewhere beautiful, with your mother there. He propped himself up on one elbow to look at her. I want to stand in front of people who matter and promise you the rest of my life. Emma's throat tightened. Lucien, I know I destroyed your faith in marriage. I know Daniel made you promises he didn't keep. I know I'm asking you to trust something that already broke you once. His hand cupped her face. But I'm not Daniel, and I'm not the man I was 6 months ago. I'm asking you to marry the man I'm becoming, the one you helped create. Tears burned behind Emma's eyes. You don't need a wedding to prove you're committed. I need it to prove it to you. His voice dropped. You gave up everything for me. Your life, your safety, your freedom. The least I can do is give you a promise that means something. Emma stared at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, the hope, the love that he wore like armor now instead of hiding behind walls. Ask me, she whispered. Lucien's expression shifted into something that looked like relief and terror combined. He slid out of bed, naked and unself-conscious, and dropped to one knee beside it. Emma's laugh was half sob. Emma Vale, Lucien said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Will you marry me? You don't have a ring. I have something better. He reached for his discarded jeans and pulled out a small box from the pocket, opened it. Inside sat a simple gold band. No diamonds. No ostentatious display of wealth. Just a ring that looked like it belonged to people who built lives instead of empires. It's perfect, Emma breathed. Is that a yes? She launched herself at him, knocking them both to the floor in a tangle of limbs and laughter. Yes, she said against his mouth. Yes, you impossible man. Yes! Lucien slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her like he was sealing a vow. And somewhere in the mountains of Washington, in a cabin that smelled like rain and coffee and new beginnings, two people who'd survived hell found something they'd never expected. Peace. They married in November beneath falling leaves and golden light. The ceremony was small. Emma's mother, healthy enough to travel, weeping happy tears in the front row. Catherine, who'd flown in from New York, standing as witness with the kind of professional composure that almost hid her smile. Alexander, still moving carefully but alive, serving as Lucien's best man with a quiet dignity that spoke of battles survived. A local officiant who had no idea who they really were. And each other. Lucien wore a simple gray suit. Emma wore a dress she'd found in a vintage shop, cream-colored, tea-length, nothing like the elaborate gown she'd imagined as a girl. It was perfect. They said their vows beside the lake, the water mirror still and reflecting mountains and sky. Lucien's voice was steady when he promised to protect her, to choose her, to build a life where she never felt invisible again. Emma's voice shook when she promised to stay, to trust him, to love all the broken parts he thought made him unlovable. When the officiant pronounced them married, Lucien kissed her like he'd been waiting his entire life for this moment. Maybe he had. The reception was held in their cabin. Champagne that wasn't served by someone invisible. Food they'd cooked themselves. Music from a speaker instead of a string quartet. Emma's mother pulled her aside during the dancing. You're happy, she said. Not a question. an observation. I am, Emma smiled. Is that surprising? Considering everything you've been through, yes. Her mother's eyes were sharp despite her illness. But I'm glad. You deserve happiness, baby. Even with him? Especially with him. Her mother glanced at Lucienne, who was talking quietly with Alexander near the fireplace. I don't know what he was before he met you. Don't want to know. But I know what he is now, and that man would burn the world for you. Emma's chest tightened. He almost did. And you'd do the same for him. Her mother squeezed her hand. That's what love looks like when it's real. Messy, terrifying, worth every risk. Emma hugged her mother, breathing in the scent of her perfume and the underlying chemical smell of treatment medications that had become familiar. Thank you for surviving, Emma whispered. I needed you here. I'm not going anywhere yet. Her mother pulled back, eyes bright. I want to meet my grandchildren someday. Emma's laugh was wet with tears. One crisis at a time. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Emma and Lucian stood on their dock watching the water turn to fire. What are you thinking? Lucian asked quietly. Emma leaned into him. That 6 months ago I was broken, alone, invisible. And now I'm married to a man who sees every part of me and chooses to stay anyway. I'm the one who should be grateful. His arm tightened around her waist. You didn't just save my life. You saved me from becoming something inhuman. You were never inhuman, just hurt. Semantics. A pause. Do you ever miss it? The excitement? The danger? Emma considered. Sometimes I miss feeling like I mattered, but then I remember I matter to you, to my mother, to the life we're building. She turned to face him. And that's enough. Lucienne kissed her forehead. What if it's not always enough? What if you wake up one day and realize you married a ghost instead of the man you fell in love with? Then we'll figure it out together. Emma's voice was firm. I didn't marry Lucien Moreau, the billionaire. I married you, the man who burns eggs when he's distracted, who reads 3 books at once and never finishes any of them, who wakes up at 3 in the morning and goes outside to make sure the property is secure, even though we both know nothing's coming. Old habits. Human habits. She touched his face. You're allowed to be human now. Allowed to be imperfect. Allowed to build something small and quiet instead of massive and terrifying. Lucian's eyes were suspiciously bright. When did you get so wise? When I survived loving you. He laughed and pulled her close. They stood on the dock until the stars came out, holding each other while the world moved around them, unthreatening and vast. Winter came. Snow blanketed the mountains and turned the lake into glass. Emma and Lucien learned to chop wood, to winterize the cabin, to survive the kind of cold that belonged to elevation and isolation. They learned each other's rhythms. Lucien's nightmares came less frequently. Emma stopped flinching at unexpected sounds. They built routines that felt like normal instead of survival. Catherine called every week with updates. Alexander visited once, bringing news from New York. The city had moved on, found new scandals, forgotten about the billionaire who died in flames. Lucian's name was becoming history. Emma's mother's treatment continued to work. The word remission became sustained remission, became possibly cured. Miracles came in medical jargon and clean scan results. And slowly, carefully, Emma and Lucien built a life that looked nothing like the one that had almost destroyed them. On a February morning, Emma woke feeling nauseous. She made it to the bathroom just in time. When she emerged, pale and shaky, Lucien was waiting with water and concern. You okay? I think so. Might be something I ate. But the nausea came back the next morning, and the next. On the 4th day, Emma stared at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands and watched 2 lines appear. Positive. She found Lucien in his workshop behind the cabin, building a bookshelf from scratch. Sawdust covered his clothes. His hair was disheveled. He looked nothing like the cold-eyed billionaire she'd met in that ballroom. He looked like home. I'm pregnant, Emma said from the doorway. Lucien's saw stopped mid-cut. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Say something, Emma whispered. He crossed the workshop in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her. His hands settled on her hips, his forehead pressed against her stomach. When he looked up, tears were streaming down his face. I thought I'd lost the ability to feel joy, he said, his voice broken. Thought I'd buried it so deep under violence and control that it was gone forever. But this, his hands trembled against her. This is joy. Emma's own tears fell. You're happy? Terrified, but happy. He stood and pulled her against him. We're bringing a child into the world, someone who'll never know the man I was, who'll only know the man you helped me become. Emma buried her face in his neck. What if we mess this up? We will, repeatedly. Lucian's laugh was wet. But we'll do it together, and that kid will know they're loved, protected, seen. He pulled back to look at her. They'll never be invisible. Emma kissed him with salt on her lips and hope in her chest. Spring arrived. The snow melted. Green returned to the mountains. The lake thawed and filled with life. Emma's body changed, growing round with the evidence of what they'd created. Lucienne became obsessively protective, worrying about her nutrition, her sleep, whether the cabin was safe enough for a baby. Some habits really did die hard. Emma's mother visited for a month, glowing with health and excitement about becoming a grandmother. She and Lucienne developed an easy rapport built on mutual devotion to Emma and terrible jokes that made Emma roll her eyes. Catherine sent gifts, impossibly soft baby clothes, books on parenting, a crib that probably cost more than most people's cars. Alexander sent a card that just said, "Congratulations on your resurrection." And in late August, on a morning when the lake was still as glass and the mountains were painted gold with sunrise, Emma went into labor. Lucien drove her to the hospital in the nearest town, gripping her hand so tight she thought he might break bones. He stayed with her through everything, the contractions, the epidural, the long hours of waiting while their world prepared to change forever. When their daughter finally arrived, screaming her fury at being born into cold air and bright lights, Lucien wept openly. Emma watched him hold their child for the first time. This man who'd destroyed empires, who'd killed to protect her, who'd walked away from everything he'd built for the chance at something real, and saw him completely unmade by 10 fingers and 10 toes and eyes that would someday be blue like his. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's ours," Emma said. They named her Grace, for the gift they'd been given, for the second chance, for the life they'd fought to survive. 6 months after Grace was born, Emma stood on the dock holding her daughter while watching Lucien fish with the terrible concentration of someone who'd only recently learned how. Grace gurgled against Emma's shoulder, fascinated by the water and the mountains, and her father's complete incompetence with a fishing rod. "You're terrible at this," Emma called. "I'm learning," Lucien called back. "Patience is a virtue." "Since when?" "Since I married a woman who demands I develop some." Emma laughed. Grace laughed too, the sound pure and delighted and completely unaware that her parents had once lived in a world of violence and blood. She'd never know that world. Emma and Lucien had made sure of it. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "How's my goddaughter?" Emma snapped a photo of Grace and sent it back. Catherine's response was immediate. "Perfect." Like her mother. Another text followed. "Alexander sends his love. Says to tell Lucien he's still a terrible fisherman." Emma smiled and typed back, "He's aware." Lucien finally gave up on fishing and waded back to shore. He climbed onto the dock and kissed Emma's temple, then Grace's head. "Remind me why we thought fishing was relaxing," he said, "because you read about it in a book." "Books lie." Grace reached for Lucien with chubby fingers. He took her, cradling her against his chest, with the careful reverence of someone holding something irreplaceable. "What are you thinking?" Emma asked quietly. Lucien looked out over the lake, at the mountains, at the life they'd built from ashes and second chances. "That I spent 40 years becoming a monster," he said, "and 2 years learning to be human again, and every second of it was worth it to get here." Emma's hand found his. "No regrets?" "About leaving the empire, disappearing, becoming someone new?" He looked at her, at Grace sleeping peacefully in his arms. "Not one. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." His thumb traced circles on Emma's palm. "Because the hardest things are usually the ones most worth doing." They stood together on the dock as the sun climbed higher, warming the water and the mountains and the small family that had survived hell to find something worth protecting. Emma thought about the woman she'd been, broken, invisible, drowning in debt and despair. Thought about the night she'd met a dangerous man in a ballroom and made a choice that should have destroyed her. Instead, it had saved her, both of them. "I love you," she said. Lucian kissed her. "I know." Grace woke and demanded attention with the imperious authority of someone who'd never had to fight to be seen. And on a dock in northern Washington, 3 people who'd found each other in the darkness built a life in the light. No more empires, no more blood, no more hiding, just family, just love, just the quiet, extraordinary miracle of survival. Emma had spent her life disappearing, but in Lucian's arms, holding their daughter while the mountains watched and the water sang, she'd never felt more visible, more real, more completely, perfectly herself. The woman who'd served champagne to strangers had become someone worth fighting for. The billionaire who'd ruled through fear had learned to protect through love. And the empire they built together was small enough to fit on a dock, strong enough to weather anything, and worth more than all the money and power in the world, because it was theirs. And neither of them would ever let it go.